Black Canary and Green Arrow are one of the most iconic DC couples of all time. Whenever people talk about the best couples in superhero comics, it usually doesn't take long before they come up in the conversation. As of November 2025, they have only been married once in the main universe, and that marriage lasted just 2 years, even though their relationship has been a consistent part of various DC books over multiple decades. Their wedding ended up being the perfect example of how not to do a superhero wedding purely because of how badly it was executed. It's insane to think that the Injustice comics ended up delivering a better Black Canary Green Arrow wedding compared to the main universe. Let's go back to 2007. At that point, Black Canary and Green Arrow had been broken up for about 3 years. In those 3 years, they barely talked or interacted with each other. Their only major interaction that really mattered was Oliver using his status as mayor of Star City to help Dinah's adopted daughter, Sin Lance, immigrate to the United States. And that was it. Their breakup happened because Oliver Queen cheated on her, and in a desperate attempt to avoid telling her, he basically isolated himself so that she would be the one to end things. And it worked. That's where things turned at the start of 2007. By the end of that same year, DC would release a Black Canary and Green Arrow wedding special one shot. You would think they spent that year slowly reuniting these two, letting them confront their past issues, talk things through, and then decide to take the next step together, right? But no, that's not what we get at all. What we actually get is Black Canary randomly reuniting and working with Green Arrow after nearly 3 years apart with little to no fanfare. It feels like a regular throwaway team up when Black Canary shows up in Green Arrow 73 and they randomly reunite. There is no build up, there is no sense of anticipation, there is nothing that tells you that this is supposed to lead to a huge moment for them. On top of that, Oliver's solo series up until that point gave absolutely no hints that he misses Dinah, wants to make amends with her, or is even thinking about proposing and taking the next step with her. When you read Green Arrow issue 74, they have already gotten back together, as shown by them sleeping together. What happened to all the problems they had? Apparently, none of it matters anymore. You might think it's just initial joy at seeing each other again after so long, but no, it's just never brought up again. It's also worth mentioning that Black Canary apparently did find out sometime after their breakup that Oliver cheated on her, but apparently she never did anything about it or confronted him about it. It's kind of wild to think about it, but that's just how it went. So you get 2 issues of them working together again, and by the end of issue 75, Oliver Queen proposes to her. The proposal feels almost insulting in how random it is instead of feeling like something massive. It comes out of nowhere, and if you read the run from start to finish, you're left wondering how this moment even makes sense. Just from how it starts, it's easy to see how rushed and badly executed it all is, but there is a lot more to it. To DC's credit, they don't have Black Canary immediately say yes to the proposal. Black Canary gets her own solo miniseries that explores her complicated feelings towards Oliver Queen as she tries to figure out what her answer should be. It's a solid miniseries, but for some reason it never brings up or even hints at Dinah's big declaration in the iconic Longbow Hunter storyline. That's the story where she repeatedly says that she is satisfied with them just being a romantic couple and isn't interested in marriage. She also talks about not wanting children because she doesn't want them to grow up as orphans if something happens to her and the man she marries. There is a genuinely intriguing character conflict to it that would fit her current dilemma perfectly, but it is just never mentioned. Towards the end of the miniseries, you finally see Dinah say yes after noting Oliver Queen's recent growth. It's a pretty sweet moment, and if there is one thing to be grateful for in all of this wedding chaos, it's the Black Canary miniseries we ended up getting. Comics have a long history of iconic wedding issues. Think about any superhero couple that's gotten married, and you can immediately see how rare and memorable those wedding issues are. Even if the characters aren't mega popular, those kind of stories always end up sticking with people. Before Black Canary and Green Arrow's wedding one shot, DC put out a couple of pre wedding one shots focusing on Black Canary getting ready for the wedding and their bachelor and bachelorette parties. Before getting into the wedding itself, I want to mention one more thing that I found really frustrating about how their wedding was done. DC never really lets the characters close to these two react to their engagement and wedding announcement, even though that's usually one of the best parts about doing something like this. Instead, it just gets glossed over as if it's nothing. Sure, there is an absolutely hilarious page showing how various characters react when they get the wedding invitation, but it would have been great to actually see people like Roy Harper, Barbara Gordon, and others process this initial news in a meaningful manner. It is September 2007, and it is finally time for their wedding special one shot. On paper, it looks great. The writer is Jed Winnick, the artist is Amanda Connor. It is a really strong creative team. The one shot starts off wonderfully with Black Canary and Green Arrow having a small argument, the rest of the DC universe reacting to the news about their marriage, and there's even a fun little subplot about Black Canary and Green Arrow's sex life. They have a huge bombastic wedding with all of their superhero friends present. The ceremony gets attacked by supervillains, but of course the heroes save the day and they finally get married in front of everyone they know and love. It's simple, it's fun, it's entertaining, maybe a little bit predictable, but it's probably what everyone wanted from a wedding special one shot. Until we get to the ending where Black Canary ends up killing Green Arrow. And no, that is not a joke. That's exactly how it ends. There is a reason why this one shot almost never gets brought up as a good example of how to do a superhero wedding issue. As you would expect, there is a twist, and the twist is that the Green Arrow who tried to attack and kill Black Canary on their wedding night, forcing her to kill him in self defense, was actually a shapeshifter. The real Oliver Queen had been taken before the wedding. That leads into a story where the Arrow family reunite to find him, and there are some genuinely fun moments in seeing them all back together. But just when it seems like things might finally get better, all of a sudden Connor Hawk, aka the second Green Arrow, gets shot and falls into a coma. And that's when DC decides to give us that real wedding between Black Canary and Green Arrow. And no, I'm not kidding. Connor is in a coma, Oliver is grieving, and somehow DC has Black Canary suggest that they should get married and they actually go ahead with it. They have a small intimate ceremony with some of their closest friends, but it happens in such an anticlimactic and unsatisfying manner that it feels completely unworthy of such an iconic couple. Some people might argue that subverting expectations isn't necessarily a bad idea, but honestly, it depends on the execution and it just doesn't work here. Superhero weddings are already not as common as they should be, and when they do happen, I believe they should be fan service at its finest, and I do not think there is anything wrong with that. No matter how badly some superhero marriages end, there is usually at least one wedding issue where the characters get a genuine happy ending, at least for a brief moment, which fans of that couple can always look back on. These two do not even get that. They get a random wedding in a random issue, and even in that issue, their wedding isn't the main focus. The issue is rightfully about Connor Hawk's injury and even ends with him being kidnapped, while the wedding is treated as a minor subplot. None of it feels like it was done with a desire to deliver something memorable for these characters. And while interviews from this era are pretty scarce, it feels safe to assume that DC just wanted a wedding for the sake of it and picked these two because most of the big superhero couples they had were already married. That's why it all felt so rushed, and once they did it, it feels like they had no idea what to do, so they just kept throwing random shocks at the audience. Imagine if Spider Man's iconic wedding issue started with Aunt May getting into a coma, and they gave you 3 pages of Peter Parker and Mary Jane getting married, and then ended it with Aunt May getting kidnapped by a mysterious villain. That's exactly what Black Canary and Green Arrow ended up getting. When you read the stories that happen after their wedding, it honestly feels like DC immediately regretted marrying them. They barely get along, they are constantly arguing, and at one point, DC even splits their duo book so that Black Canary and Green Arrow can have their own separate plots, even though they were sharing the same book. Then, only 2 years later, Cry for Justice happens. Green Arrow kills Prometheus, which sets off a chain of events that ends with Black Canary leaving him and getting a divorce. The worst part is that the story finally remembers Dinah's Longbow Hunter speech, but it comes up only during their divorce. After that wasn't bad enough, this ends up being their final interaction before the big New 52 reboot. Black Canary and Green Arrow do not interact at all in the New 52, but hey, that's a story for another time. Every time I get a chance to revisit this era, the same question always comes up in my mind. What was the point of marrying Black Canary and Green Arrow? The books barely seemed interested in exploring their marriage. They fought constantly. Their relationship after marriage was mostly just misery, and it ends just as abruptly as it began. They wanted the drama without putting in the effort. They wanted to destroy them without caring about what it would take to build them back up again. There was never any real intention of delivering an emotional payoff to everything they put these characters through. That's why this whole thing feels as horrible as it does. And the worst part is that it all could have been something amazing if it had led to something meaningful for the Arrow family. If they had taken the time to explore the fallout of everything they put them through and then slowly brought the family back together, it could have been a powerful story about resilience. But that wasn't the point. Destruction was the point. As a major fan of these characters and their romantic pairing, it is incredibly frustrating that this is the one and only time they have ever been married in the main universe, and it is arguably their worst era as a couple. It is also a clear example of how badly superhero comics can handle relationships. It is totally fine to subvert expectations, but when subverting expectations becomes more important than respecting the people who care about these characters and trying to create something memorable for them, that's when the story fails. Nobody's looking for literary awards from a comic book wedding one shot. What people want is something memorable, a celebration of two of their favorite characters or their favorite romantic pairing getting a big moment. That is the bare minimum. It doesn't matter if it is simple and predictable. I would assume that most fans would want a moment of triumph for these characters, and there is nothing that does that better than a simple, well done wedding. Something iconic that stands the test of time, that people can look back on with fondness, that new generations can discover and instantly understand that this is a big moment. That is what great weddings in comics usually manage to do. Unfortunately, Black Canary and Green Arrow didn't get that bare minimum.